Namaskar. I am Professor Nandini Sahu, Vice Chancellor, Hindi University, West Bengal. We have introduced a YouTube lecture series, a very special lecture series on comparative world literatures in the Hindi University, West Bengal since January 2025, after I joined the position of the Vice Chancellor. In the process of the series, we have invited more than 35 scholars, researchers, senior professors, academicians, creative writers, critics, and theorists all over the world, and they have delivered lectures for our university under the umbrella term comparative world literatures, and they have taken their specific subjects like their own research, and then they have taken critical pedagogy from different world literatures, and then they have become an integral part of the Hindi University West Bengal special lecture series on comparative world literatures. Today, I am immensely happy that this lecture series has created ripples in Indian academia and outside. Many universities have approached us to utilize the lectures delivered by our experts as a part of their classroom teaching and research and theory classrooms, as far as their literary theory classes are concerned or comparative literature classes are concerned. And this is a milestone that within 6 months of the introduction of the lecture series, thousands and thousands of researchers and scholars have been closely associated with us, and we are editing a volume, Comparative World Literatures, where we have invited research papers from all the speakers who have already delivered lectures for us. Also, we have invited those scholars who are going to be a part of our lecture series, and they have shown enthusiasm to contribute their full-length papers to the edited volume Comparative World Literatures, which eventually we will use as a part of our coursework on comparative world literatures when we introduce the Department of Comparative World Literatures in Hindi University. Also, I am immensely happy to share with our scholars, our readers, and our enthusiasts that the internal faculty members of Hindi University have started contributing in a meaningful way to the pedagogy of comparative world literatures. They have started delivering lectures under the umbrella term comparative world literatures, and 2 or more internal faculty members of Hindi University have already delivered their lectures, and more number of faculty members have registered with the series, and they are discussing their research with me, and very soon, within a couple of weeks, we will complete the recordings of the internal faculty members of Hindi University who have also been critically a part of the comparative world literature series, like translation studies departments, then the Hindi department people, history and political science department people. How they can be a part of comparative world literatures is the question here, the point of concern here. Translation studies people can use comparative literature not just as a linguistic exercise, but as a method of epistemic mediation. They allow ideas, concepts, and narratives from Hindi and other Indian languages and world languages to enter the global academic conversation while retaining their cultural and philosophical integrity. For history and political science departments, translated archives, oral histories, and political texts can be comparatively used and read to question the dominant narratives in the world, and also to rediscover the silenced texts, the silenced voices. Like I read somewhere that history is written by the winner, Now, what happens to the history of the so-called loser? Ethnomusicologists, historians, they take up the history of the so-called loser as a part of their research. So this is what our history department people are doing, and I am very happy to share that many of them have been highly published, and they are working on ethnomusicology, on history and pedagogy of the historical texts, which are also a part of the comparative world literatures in a very intertextual and polyphonic way, in a very interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary and multidisciplinary way. For history and political science people, translated archives and oral histories and political texts, they speak out for the people who are marginalized, who are the subaltern, who do not have a voice. And this makes comparative literature a methodology of resistance against epistemic colonialism, epistemic violence against the subaltern. And then when it comes to languages for global theorization, through comparative literature frameworks, Hindi and other literature departments, they can be, they take it as a part of their history, their research and publication, and these researches can be used as models for a theoretical source in their own rights, producing indigenous concepts, aesthetic categories, and political critiques. Comparative readings of Hindi texts in our Hindi university, alongside the world literatures, they can help political science people explore cultural nationalism, which we are successfully doing, subaltern politics, and movements of resistance, while history can locate them in specific temporal and sociological and social contexts. And then when it comes to reframing world literature from the global south, comparative literature enables the comparative world literature departments to challenge the canon by foregrounding, South dialogues and Hindi dialogues with African, Latin American, Southeast Asian texts instead of the usual North-South pedagogy or North-South dichotomy. We believe in inclusivity and flexibility, and through this comparative world literatures lecture series, we have been successfully doing it, and I am very happy to share here that not just external experts but the internal faculty members from Hindi, translation studies, history and political science departments from our university have been substantially contributing. They have been delivering lectures. Comparative literature enables the world literatures to challenge the canons, and also how comparative literatures engage with political science to map these literary exchanges against patterns of decolonization, post-colonial alliances, and transnational solidarity movements is the point of concern here, and our faculty members have been constantly discussing these ideas and ideologies with me, and they have been contributing to the lecture series through publications and through lectures, and we are sharing those YouTubes with you continuously. History can trace the deep structures of cultural memory, migration, labor through these comparative readings. And when it comes to memory studies or mnemoculture, through comparative world literature's pedagogy, we are also contributing to the narratives as archives of political and historical knowledge systems. Literary texts, when approached through comparative literature, become the alternative archives for history and political science, preserving the dissent, everyday resistance, and emotional registers that are absent in our state records. We are making the silenced voices speak. Through translation studies, we play a crucial role by making such living archives, by creating such living archives on dying languages, on dying cultural heritages, and we are making those available, and we are enabling the cross-cultural research and pedagogy through this lecture series. Hindi's vast corpus of novels, poetry, and folk literature becomes a living laboratory for these archival excavations. We are dealing with Hindi literature, Bengali literature, English literature, and all other Indian languages and literatures, and also world literatures through this particular very important series that has created ripples in Indian academia. Comparative literature has become a pedagogical common for us. In teaching, comparative literature offers an interdisciplinary classroom where translation studies, Hindi, world literatures, history, and political science they co-teach models like revolutions in literature, colonial encounters, memory and migration studies, and our students are learning how to read a poem or how to read a novel or how to read any text from history or public administration or political science by applying the comparative research methodology. We are very rich in research methodology classes in the Hindi University. In fact, our faculty members take very special classes on research methodology for our students, and those classes are extremely useful for the students, and they have given me the feedback about it. This fosters the 21st century research skills, critical multilingual reading, cross-cultural analysis, and the ability to recognize literature as both aesthetic and political action. The personal is political, isn't it? So in the Hindi University, the matters that we discuss as a part of our personal discourses through this comparative world literature series are also our political, academic, and social statements. We have created ripples, we have created a signature of our own, a brand of our own, brand Hindi University. Once again, I congratulate all the external speakers who have also contributed to our comparative world literatures lecture series, and the internal faculty members who have started contributing to the series in a big way. Thank you.
A very good morning to all. First of all, I'd like to thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor Ma'am for her great support, inspirations, and her enduring patience in organizing several academic ventures in which we are being constantly and consistently we are being plunged into. And I am really thankful to her for asking us, for instilling into us great force to engage into such academic ventures. And I am thankful and grateful to all the faculties of Hindi University and to all the non-teaching staff and other members, other technicians of Hindi University for making this event possible. And I am thankful to Amanji also for organizing, for making it possible to reach Hindi University in spite of such torrential rain which Kolkata is facing for past few days. So today I'll be speaking on ecological modernity, in the sense that obviously it is a topic of embracing embracing borders, embracing methodologies that strictly comprise ecological understandings. But I have tried to bring ecological modernity as a catalyst, or as a factor that is constantly influencing the development of major literary compositions, which reside within the borders of major shifts in the ecological developments in the post-Renaissance period in the world. Now, I'm not uh, uh, bringing any kind of uh, definitions on eco-criticism or uh, bringing a kind of interconnectedness between uh, humans and nature and how that is being reflected in the literature. I'm not doing such things, and I'll not be doing. And I hope that those things have already been done, and major literary compositions have already comprised such writings have already that field has become quite satiated. It has become quite full with descriptions of nature, how humans are being dependent, how humans are destroying the nature. These things have already been discussed. So I'm not going into such discussions because it will be a great repetition. So what I'll be doing, and I have just tried to um, uh, I have just made clear. I have just cleared my points at the very beginning, that this presentation actually tries to frame the changes in the literary genres, and this change has been done by a change in the philosophical understandings uh, uh, on ecology, and this changes in the shapes of philosophical understandings have been reflected in the writings that are based on, um, sometimes it is based on evolution, sometimes it is based on natural history, and sometimes it is based on colonial ecology. So I have tried to divide my understandings into three shades, into three layers. First layer is very much um, concentrated within the development of natural history, that really comprise the philosophical understandings in the post-Renaissance period. So, in the first phase, I have tried to um, uh, spot uh, the book called History of Winds by Francis Bacon, because I think this book appear iconic in expressing, in bringing natural agents within the purview of natural history, because wind is something very abstract, we cannot see, but when we write something about its history, it becomes iconic. And this writing is very much based on observations and experimentations. And so we see that Francis Bacon actually started with a writing that is based on observations and experimentations. And this method is very much inductive in the sense that he is trying to acquire knowledge on the basis of observation and experimentations. So he is trying to challenge the existing knowledge on nature. So his method is very much inductive, and he tries to say he tried to say, sorry, that uh, this method of this methodology of gaining knowledge on the basis of observations and experimentations uh, make has made humans to submit to knowledge and experiments, and whereby they can create their own reason, and in the process they can act as god. And Bacon explained in a way of describing the new role of man as taming and subduing the reluctant creatures. And this actually filled him with a power, with a kind of pride, which was enough to undermine the power of God. And this will enable man to create new worlds and go before nature and command nature. So this is a great breakthrough in the uh, world of natural history, in the world of literary compositions, because man is gaining knowledge, so he is gaining power. So in this sense, I have made a kind of graphical image in which I have tried to say that this is knowledge as power, concept of knowledge, and this knowledge is not inherent, because the inherent knowledge is something which church has already tried to say that you should submit to God. I'm not saying I'm not being an atheist. I'm not saying that God is not there, man is the most powerful. It's not that. But the thing is that what church is saying, that is wrong. So knowledge cannot be inherent. What church is saying, that is inherent. So knowledge cannot be inherent. Knowledge has to be gathered through experimentation and observation. And so it has been defined by C.A. Bailey. Now, C.A. Bailey is coming much later, in the 17th century. So this gathering of knowledge has been termed as intelligence by C.A. Bailey. And this concept of gathering knowledge becomes a stepping stone of colonization. And this concept of gathering knowledge has been termed by Bacon as organon, or it can be said it's a uh, it means reasoning or a system of logic, a kind of logical reason. So in the next graphical image, or what is organon? Organon is something called gathering of knowledge on natural resources, uh, uh, and since gathering of knowledge on natural resources is a kind of thing which is very human handled. So this knowledge gathering depends on things which actually becomes very beneficial, which actually is beneficial to humans. So this gathering of knowledge is also becoming very gradually, it is becoming very partial. Whatever is needed for humans, knowledge on that thing, knowledge on those things, knowledge about those things is being gathered. So it's becoming partial. So we see this a kind of development of history which Bacon has termed as human history. Now this human, or not human, this human history is based on ethics, it's based on knowledge, it's based on reasoning. But this ethics, reasoning, and knowledge is very distorted. As I have said earlier, it's becoming quite partial, not impartial. Knowledge is not being gathered on everything that is. So on the basis of this, which I have said earlier, organon, we see the development of new philosophical literatures. In the core part, we see the development of new philosophical literatures. And on the periphery, we see the development of a kind of system called ecological modernity, which is actually transforming the environment. The environment is being transformed because, as I have said earlier, that knowledge, gathering of knowledge is becoming partial. So environment, gathering of knowledge on those things of the environment which is of human use is being increasingly made, and in this process there is a development of an attempt to transform the environment as well. So these things are going on. So this whole process can be termed, or I have termed this process as ecological modernity. So this thing gets reflected in the post-Renaissance literary philosophies, because environment is made of everything. It's made of geography, it's made of geology, mineralogy, history of plants, history of animals. So we see the development of inductive method, we see the practice of gathering knowledge on every other things, on everything, on gathering knowledge on geology, on geography, on mineralogy, and all this process actually leads to the development of a kind of generalization which can be called as natural history. So generalization in the sense, I'm not saying that natural history is quite general. Obviously, it's a distinct part of human development, a distinct part of uh, uh, developmental process of uh, developmental process in the whole system of discourses. Obviously, it's a special thing, but when it is gathering knowledge from every other subjects, it has been termed as natural history. It is becoming generalized. Now, in natural history, we see after Bacon, we see the arrival of increasing research on plants was being done by John Ray and his Historia Plantarum. It's a great book because he has totally described the various plants, various floral plants, various fruit-bearing plants in that book, Historia Plantana. So it's a great book. So we see the process of gathering knowledge has begun. Now, coming back to the process of linking ecology with trend of comparative world literature actually begins with uh, Carlos Linnaeus. In the sense, obviously, Carlos Linnaeus is not a literary person, but the thing is that he actually started the system of personification of not non-living, but personification of plants. How he made that thing? Trying to explain. Now, I have already said that Historia Plantarum, John Ray's Historia Plantarum, is a great book. And following John Ray, we also see Mary Chapel Somerset. She collected plants, she collected seeds, and documented her extensive collection of seeds and plants from West Indies, Africa, India, Sri Lanka, China, Japan, and made detailed manuscripts on those things. So we see on the basis of this collection of plants, we see a certain kind of uh, documentation is being made, preparation of manuscripts, documentation of the living condition of the plants, uh, that is being reflected in the writings of many botanists. So writing documentation, which was previously a literary activity concentrated among the philosophers, among the literary persons. Now it has shifted, it's gradually shifting towards the persons, towards the people who are dealing with botanical science, who are dealing with geological science, who are dealing with uh, other scientific things also. So another great person, Leonard Fluken, he also published a series of volumes of engraved plates of plants, Phytographia, 1691 to 96, 1691 to 96. It's quite a uh, very, very long ago. And engraved plates of plants means drawing is being done. Now, drawing is a drawing of the various parts of the plant is being done. It's being engraved, it's being documented so that other people can see what actually a particular plant looks like. So, pictographical expression of plants, animals are being made. In 1696, Sloane published in Latin elaborate catalogue, Catalogus Plantarum Q. Insula Jamaica. He made this elaborate catalog based on the plants he collected in Jamaica. He later published Natural History of Jamaica in two volumes, 1707 and 1725. So we see provincial natural history is being reflected in the writings of major botanists of 15th century. So 15th and 16th century as well. And Horace Benedict de Saussure. The word geology was introduced by Saussure with the publication of first volume of his voyages, Dans les Alpes, Travels in the Alps. So geological surveys, geological discoveries, geological developments are also being reflected in the writings of major geologists, and he has done extensive work, and that is being reflected in his writings. So this is documentation of natural history, documentation of various experimentations and observations by the botanists, by the geologists and other scientists in the pre-Linnean space and time. So the documentation process has already been started. Now, what actually happened in the literary phase? Now, this documentation process, in fact, what I have done is that I have tried to mix the timings, in the sense I have tried to jot down the major documentations on ecological experimentations and observations. So in that process, I have tried to I have tried to bring Dipesh Chakraborty, James Hanel, who are observers about planetary health, about workings of the earth. Uh, they have observed, they have written, they have documented in a much later period. But I have tried to bring them in one frame within 2 slides, because I have tried to point on the major variations in the process of this documentation. I've tried to highlight the layers that were present in the process of this documentation. So after Horace, I have tried to bring Isaac Newton, in the sense that Newton, obviously, he wrote something on mathematics and physics, but obviously that is strictly a part of that is strictly a part of scientific development. But his importance and contribution in the world of humans is immense, as he for the first time acquainted all humans, irrespective of their rank and standard, to the laws of nature. That nature works according to its own law. Whether you are a rich person, whether you are a king, whether you are a beggar, whether you are a poor person, that doesn't matter to nature. You will have to react in the same way that nature allows you to react. So this thing was being taught to us by Newton. So I have tried to bring Newton in this respect. And next is Margaret Cavendish. She's she is known for her writings on natural philosophy, imaginations, and social critique as well. But the thing is that she is also she's known for her strong feminist arguments. In spite of being a natural philosopher, she wrote something about uh, earth, movement of earth. She also wrote that everything on this earth is made up of very tiny minute particles called atoms. But at the same time, she wrote that there is great intellectual capabilities in women. So she's a great feminist as well. So science and social norms, scientific understandings and social understandings are getting mingled, are getting mixed every time in the writings of the natural philosophers. So writings and literary compositions uh, are becoming more interdisciplinary during this time. So we cannot marginalize, we cannot draw a line between things which are very scientific and things which are very society oriented, things which are very policy oriented, polity oriented. So we cannot um, draw a line in between those things, because philosophers are trying to write on things which are very interdisciplinary, because everything within natural history is very interdependent. Society is uh, being driven by human beings. Human beings are being driven by natural laws. Natural laws is being driven by this planetary art. So everything is interconnected. Now, next is James Hannam. He is a very recent writer, and his book "God's Philosophers: The Globe: How the Earth Became Round," Genesis of Science, all this contribute to a new trend of literature on natural philosophy. So he's not a scientist. Obviously, he's not a scientist, but he is writing on things which is within the purview of, which is within the boundary of natural philosophy. He's writing fiction, not very fictional things, but he's writing on things which are real. But he is trying to give literary touch to the things of natural philosophy, to the subjects of natural philosophy. Next is Ripesh Chakraborty, because without discussing his book, Climate of History in a Planetary Age, this whole discussion becomes irrelevant. But and he, for the first time, has given a structure called philosophical anthropology, which is quite distinct, because humans are emerging as a force in this age of planetary crisis. And since there are strong global trends of economization, this actually enables humans to exert pressure on this planet. Thus, globality appears as a new threat, and this globality also appears as a new geological time that influence the future writings on variety, that can influence, not influence, that can influence, and that is influencing the future writings on these varied trends of literary uh, philosophy as well as philosophical anthropology. Now, again, I am moving back to this system of natural philosophy. Since I was following a kind of chronology, I bridged that chronology. But again, I'm moving back to Linnaeus phase. Now, why Linnaeus became so important in the whole discourse of natural philosophy, and why his influence is uh, exerting so much, why his influence is becoming a trendsetter in the major ecological literary compositions. Now, since he developed a process called ecological intelligence, which I have termed. Now, what is this ecological intelligence? It is something that is gathering information on the major other species, on the major species other than humans. For example, the animals, the varied animals, the plants, and he has tried to name them. And he has documented all the available species which he has observed. He has documented those species with names in his book, and that is that created a tremendous influence in the world of natural history. He emerged as an evolutionist. He emerged as a geologist, botanist, and he was really he was really great in the sense that he named the major species of plants and animals on the earth, and he was a father of thus he was a father of systematic geology and botany, and he developed a science called taxonomical science. So he developed a kind of discourse called philosophical botany. Now, his work, Philosophia Botanica, which was published in 1751, it laid the foundation for modern botanical taxonomy. Uh, Linnaeus first published his uh, binomial nomenclature system for naming plants. And this process of naming plants is like personifying the plants. So Linnaeus actually personified the plants through the discourse of philosophical botany. So in this respect, we can name a book called Plants as Persons, Philosophical Botany by Matthew Hall. We come across a book. This is a very not very recent, but it was in the 20th century. This was published. Matthew Hall actually challenges readers to reconsider the moral standing of plants, because plants constitute the bulk of our visible biomass, underpin all natural ecosystems, and make life on Earth possible. Now, we all know this because plants are very relevant in this whole life system that is working, that is operating in this planet. But why Matthew said this, that we should reconsider the moral standing of, we actually know the developments, we actually know the usefulness of plants, but why Matthew Hall again and again said that we should reconsider? Because we are not considered. That's the thing. So he said that we must reconsider. Through his book, he said that we must reconsider. Because we had already, after Linnaeus, when he documented the names and usefulness of the plants, we started extracting the useful plants and uh, forgot the ethical base of the presence of plants uh, in this planet. That as we have been taught that plants must exist, we must not cut the plants, but this whole thought was being forgotten since Linnaeus documented the usefulness of the plants. Because our greedy mind, our revenue oriented intuition actually guided us to extract the plants. So we move towards a phase called distorted colonial botanical philosophy, in the sense that the philosophical structure philosophical botany which Linnaeus actually taught us, that philosophical botany got distorted. We created a distorted version of philosophical botany, which can be called as colonial philosophical botany, which was based on the extraction of useful and rare plants. So the colonial plants, they were being considered as passive, insensitive. We developed a vision, we developed an image in our mind that plants won't say anything. We will cut, we will destroy, we will extract. So they were being projected as insensitive and passive beings, and we continued with our assault operations over the plants, and that ethical behavior, which actually philosophical botany taught us, that got destroyed. We destroyed that thing. So, in this colonial botanical philosophy, we see the development of several other ecological compositions, literary composition. These are not natural history. These are not compositions based on natural history, which earlier I described. These are description of useful plants. These are compositions based on the description of useful plants. Uh, First is Hortus Malabaricus by Hendrik van Reed. He was a Dutch botanist. Next is Flora Indica by William Roxburgh. He was an English botanist. Flora British India. This book was written by Joseph Dalton Hooker. A working list of the flowering plants of Balochistan by I.H. Barkil. This all intended to collect knowledge on rare and valuable plants. Thus, the plants were turned mute and they were subjected only to human. They were used, they were subjected, they were assaulted, they were subjected only to human usage. So, colonial botanical philosophy only described their values. So, we created our own limitations, we created our own philosophy, our own useful philosophy, which can benefit us, which can benefit our empire. So it was destroyed. So we cannot blame the development of natural philosophy for this natural philosophy. We cannot blame the development of natural philosophy. We cannot blame the development of philosophical botany for this distortion. This distortion was being made, and it was based mostly on human brute. So to gather knowledge on plants, we developed a system called biogeography, and this became a rallying trend of ecological modernity. And the colonial botanists, biologists, they worked, they traveled distant places, they traveled many other countries and tried to learn about useful plants, useful animals, which can benefit the development of empire. Mention may be made of James Petiver, Charles Dubois, botanical societies, botanical gardens, all these were established. They collected oriental plant specimens, dried them, later transported them to Europe. Agriculture Horticultural Society was established by William Carey in 1820. They collected information on various plants. They tried to preserve, cultivate plants for commercial purposes. So the process has begun of exploiting our natural resources. On the basis of this trend, several other documented literature, ecological literature, and documented uh, writings are being composed. So, apart from this system of collecting information on other living species, apart from humans, there also a kind of development that was going on parallelly. Uh, that was researches on evolution, development of new concepts of evolutionary theories. So, in this concept, on this concept, Historia Naturalis by Pliny the Elder was a very earliest composition, and it presented a vast array of information about animals, plants, minerals, human physiology, and this book can be regarded as a precursor to evolutionary thought. Next, Aristotle also worked on uh, uh, this evolutionary concept. He dissected animals, observed their behavior, how they actually multiply, how they grow. All this things were observed by Aristotle. Next is Albertus Magnus De Natura Locurum. It's a treatise on nature of places, including description of plants, animals, minerals, with a focus on their medicinal properties. And this also got published by the University of Cambridge. Thomas of Cantimpraise, it's a kind of encyclopedia. It gave a wide-ranged description of natural phenomena, description of plants, animals, celestial bodies. All these things are being described in that composition. Now, on evolutionary theory, several other naturalists have expressed their opinion. For example, French naturalist Buffon, his book Histoire Naturelle Generalia, he described a concept which is very new to the post-Renaissance world, and it described the medieval concepts like timeless, classic, ageless, stagnations, because he for the first time gave the concept of time, that time is limited. This concept was being given by Buffon, and it described the medieval concepts, which is ageless, which is timeless, which is a very stagnatory concepts that don't depend on the clocking pattern of time. And this concept got shattered in the face of the theory of time given by Buffon. Now, what is this concept of time? According to Buffon, every species adjusts itself to its environment, and in fact, this variety of species attests to the variety ecological patterns of the environment. This is conditioned by time. Obviously, previously our soil was much more fertile. Now it is not that much fertile. So time is constantly conditioning our nature. Sometimes it is deconditioning our nature. Sometimes it is conditioning our nature. Now this time, according to Buffon, is ever-changing, and that levy a deep impact over the natural beings. Time actually allow the natural beings to adjust to their surroundings and also allows them to die. Thus, the craving to live permanently was smashed by Buffon's naturalistic. So there was a supernatural concept that was prevailing during the medieval period, that I can live for 200, 300 years, I can live for many years. This supernatural concept, the superstitious views were destroyed by Buffon because he brought the concept of time within the pattern of human existence. Not within the pattern of human existence, but within the pattern of within the geological working of this planet. So time is the only factor to bring changes, and this actually enables humans to think that everything on this earth is changing, including Mother Earth. So everything is temporary, not permanent. So this was a great breakthrough. This was really great. This brings us to the next naturalistic philosopher, that is Lamarck, and his work Philosophie Géologique was an exposition. His composition, Philosophie Géologique, was an exposition with regard to the natural history of animals. And Lamarck has rightly pointed out that everything on this earth is changing, it's evolving, and if there is anything that is constant, it is only an apparent stability that is being created by human evolution. I am thinking that my age is constant. It is my illusion. After 60 to 70 years, I will be smashed. I will move. Another generation will come. So when humans are negating this kind of thought, they are living within a kind of illusionary world and creating a special moment for themselves. That's why I have given this title, The Moments Only of Humans Special. So humans tend to create their moments as special, which is false, as some forces are operating on Earth in the same way as they operated previously as well. We think that in our age everything is great and fine. But these forces, these scientific developments actually worked previously as well in a different form. Science also existed previously, but it existed in a different form. Thus, traditional human dogmas of special creations, or permanence, or the concept of permanence, they are superstitious and they are enough to make humans great in that age. The post-Renaissance phase, however, rendered different matters to be dealt by humans. So, in this temporary phase, you have different other matters to deal with. This time, it was growing with nature, and that too conditioned by the power of knowledge. This limited time or this temporary time, it is growing with nature. Nature is constantly uh, uh, enabling the development of this time, and this time is getting powerful. It's getting its power mainly because of knowledge. Time uh, alone is baseless. You cannot make a time, a limited time or a ageless time workable if it is not infused with uh, things that are connected with knowledge. So time when it gets joined with knowledge, it becomes powerful. So in this power of knowledge, Earth is being objectified as single unit, and in this single unit, every species should work jointly. So, this thinkings, this great imaginations, this thought-provoking versions of Lamarck, of Buffoon, really created great literary stir, and it obviously influenced the later developments. For example, for example, Dunder's, Darwin's grandfather, Erasmus Darwin, whose Zoonomia in 1794 contained a chapter on transmutation and vestiges of the natural history of creation by Robert Chambers. All these compositions uh, really transformed human vision on the over the process of evolution, over the process of life, over the process of death, and also it created new versions, new concepts of time, new concepts of nature, new concepts of knowledge. So next we find the development of the concept of transmutation by Darwin, and Darwin realized the need to accommodate his theory to the preferences of the time, because Darwin was is remembered, not was, is remembered for his great contribution in the field of the development of a process called artificial selection. Now we know what natural selection is, but his book Origin of Species, um, and many other writings which he has composed, which he composed in during the uh, 18th century, 19th century. Uh, those compositions made Darwin remarkable because in those writings, Darwin was the first scientist to mention something about artificial selection. Now, every species multiply or develop or uh, they outnumber each other through the process called transmutation. We know these things, and this has been proved by the scientist called which I mentioned, uh, Darwin's own grandfather, Erasmus Darwin, and other scientists who preceded Darwin. But Darwin said something about artificial selection in the sense that if you transport or if you transfer certain species and allow the species to grow within a congenial environmental condition, that species can multiply and that species will develop by its own power. So this, that, in fact, that species will not need uh, that species will not multiply with the help of its own parent species. You can transfer that species to another place, it will multiply by itself. So this theory actually created a great, I'd say, devastation in the sense that plants were transported, species were transported. As you know, A.W. Crosby's theory of Columbian exchange. So tremendous amount of species were transported from one place to another. Species became local. They were transported from their local region and to places. They were transported globally. So they became local. So this concept of locality actually developed with Darwinian concept of artificial selection. So so for that reason, we see the development of a process called neo-Darwinism. And in this, as I have said, that this locality of species uh, take literatures to new approaches uh, from to new approaches uh, and study on plants, study on animals was no longer concentrated within their provincial units. For example, Jim Corbett uh, wrote uh, a book called Man-Eaters of Humal. Now, these man-eaters are being transported to another region. So, this concept of locality is transforming the literary trends of uh, ecological compositions. So, similarly, a book called Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. This is these books are very much provincial. These compositions are very much provincial. So when we are talking something about locality, it is challenging the provinciality of the species. So this concept of locality actually is taking us to a new literary trend of ecological compositions. And this took place mainly because of this process of neo-Darwinism and other things, and artificial selection. So I am just at the very last, at the very concluding portions of my presentation. So this process of locality, which I have already mentioned, this process of transferring the species actually gave human a power called biopower. And on this topic, Foucault for the first time wrote something called History of Sexuality and Introduction, and also uh, in his uh, in his course called Society Must Be Defended, Foucault describes biopower as a power which takes hold of human life. In both these works, Foucault traces the shift from classical legal or sovereign power to typically modern forms of power, discipline, and biopower. And this gave uh, a kind of right to the sovereign state, which uh, which is a right of bringing about death to its subjects. If a particular species is not useful, if it is not being needed by the state has a power to destroy that species. So this kind of power is being given to state by this concept of biopower. So biopower is something which is able to access the body or individuals, which is able to access the species, and this gaining accessibility, this process of gaining accessibility into the species and individual is becoming the norm of every state. It is not guided by any law. So and this process is being dispersed, this process is being spread to every state, to every country, and each state, every state is working on the basis of this particular norm. So in the last slide, what I have tried to say is that we must make comparative ecological world literature more responsible, because it's time for us to get decentered, in the sense that we see of late many literary plant fictions such as Overstory, Signature of All Things, Island of Missing Trees, Gold Frame Citrus, Oryx and Quaid, and many others. They revolve around the impacts of planetary catastrophes on humans and interconnectedness between plants and humans. But why always this forced anthropocentrism guide the development of a comparative ecological world literature? When always humans are changing the parameters and ambits of ecological world literature, why humans, what impact is being, what impact will, how the humans will be impacted if there is a planetary crisis, how the uh, how the humans will be impacted if we cut all the trees. Why only humans? Why not about other species? So this is a kind of forced anthropocentrism that we are constantly instilling into our literary compositions. So anthropocentrism that sought to inspire man to lead remedies such as environmental humanities, protection of planetary health, these are being done by the humans. But when it comes to ecological literary compositions, we should also take into considerations the vast species that is available worldwide. Sadly, we are unable to know the extent to which they comprehend this distorted planetary health. We are unable to understand how a tiger would think that if this planet get destroyed, how a tiger would react. We are unable to comprehend that thing. So we are not bringing the visions, the imaginations of other species into the ecological literary compositions. In order to compose an eco world literature, to qualify as ecological world literature, it has to be capable of embracing many species. Globality cannot be a yardstick to assign it as such. Since there is a global pressure, since we are constantly coordinating with other nations, so we have to be in the forefront. This cannot be a very logical argument. Since we have to run a planet globally, since we have to make this planet workable, so we have to be in the forefront. This is not a very good logic. If we are to compose something very original, if we are to compose something very uh, uh, global, uh, if we have to compose something very ecological, then we should consider the visions of other species as well. So then only we can achieve something called ecological modernity, because ecology is about every species and not of humans. Thank you so much. Hello. Uh, hello.
Hello. Thank you very much,
Uh,
Dr. Guha, for enriching us with such a
uh,
beautiful lecture.
thank you so much.